Okay, here we are in DCS World. This is our system settings. Textures high, terrain textures high, civilian traffic off. I've only done that purely and simply because pretty much everyone flies with it off. Water high, visibility range is ultra. You notice you can have extreme, but actually, you know, the payoffs just doesn't work. So keep it at ultra. Heat blur is high. Again, that's a bit placebo. Well, not placebo, but I mean, that can be quite draining. I've got it on high here just to tax it a bit. Normally, I would fly with this on low, but I'm going to keep that on high. Shadows high, secondary shadows on. That's only relevant on the super carrier. Resolution to 2560 by 1440 or 2K, and as you can see here, I can fly with 3840 by 2160. But for this video, most people, I would say most people, fly at 2560 by 1440. I think it would probably just edge over those that do at 1920 by 1080, and a very few amount of us fly at 4K. It's just simply too taxing for a lot of systems. And as you can see down below in the description, this is not a mediocre machine. This is a bit of a beast machine. And as you'll see when we start, even with these settings, we'll be lucky to hit 50. We'll be lucky to hit flying over 60 frames per second, even with a 3080 Ti. One monitor, resolution of cockpit displays 1024. That's only relevant to mirrors anyway, and we're going to have them off. MSA 822, depth of field off. Lens effect is none. Motion blur is off. Clouds is high. And here we go. SSAA is to ×2. Now remember what I said in the Nvidia control panel. You can have this at ×1.5 and then enhance the application setting in the anti-aliasing settings and have MFAA on. And there is a notable difference between just 1.5 and MFAA on. But depreciating returns, especially if you go to ×2. When I normally fly with ×1.5 with MFAA on, or sometimes don't even bother. So I don't actually fly in ×2, but I'm going to do it for this one anyway. Local reflections off, ambient occlusion off. Ambient occlusion, although it's not supported, absolutely will destroy your frames in the cockpit. Actually, how many times are you going to be leaning down going, "Ooh, look at the shadows. Oh, look at the depth of shadow." And if you do say that, then go and design a kitchen. This is not the sim for you. Screenshot format is irrelevant. You can see up here we're pushing the boundaries here. 1500 on the clutter grass. Forest to 100%. Forest details to 1. Scenery details to 1. 90,000 on the preload radius. There's no need for it to go any higher. It really genuinely isn't. Chimney smoke density, just kept it to 1. Gamma is preferential to individuals. I've got it at 2.2. It's what ED recommend, but I've usually ranged, depending on what you're flying, between 1.8 and 2.2. In the MI8, the HIP, or the Mighty 8, that actually I can have this way down to 1.4, purely because of the transparency issues with the glass inside the cockpit in the MI8. But 2.2 is a good start for start. External field of view is preferential. I've got it at 78, but that alters dynamically with your zoom setting anyway. Anisotropy filtering to 16. I've got the object shadows to flat, purely simply because depreciating returns if you have that on default, and all that means is that shadow moves with the position of the sun. So I've left it at flat. Cockpit global illumination, I think, is an absolute red herring, waste of time. You're never going to notice the detail, and it's just going to eat 2 or 3 frames, so just leave it off. Rain droplets on. Vsync, as you can see, is off, and full screen is off. In the Nvidia control panel piece, I said when I do fly, I fly with Vsync on, and I have Vsync off in DCS World, and that's completely preferential. It's entirely down to you. If you want absolute as maximum frames as you possibly can and not worried about tearing, and you're above the refresh rate, then by all means turn this off. It's individual choice. I like super smooth flight, and for that, Vsync and everything else off is the way for me to go forward. And there we go, cursor confined to game window. You notice I've got that turned off actually, because a lot of you, like me, have got other monitors and other things going on, and we don't want this to disappear just because we're on full screen. Final thing I'll say is a bit of a top tip for you, and that is that full screen isn't actually full screen. Since about 2014, full screen is a borderless window with DCS World. So for those of you who go, oh, you've got to go full screen, actually you're still in a window. It's just not bordered. It's essentially borderless. Right, there we go. Let's double, triple check that we've saved that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go for a little flight in a KA-50, a Black Shark, escorted by an Apache. And then at the end of it, we're going to do some pew-pew on some target. Points to note throughout all this is you really want to keep an eye on the frames per second up here, and the amount of percentage that the 3080 Ti is working at. Really, we want to see this above 95% at all times, really, which tells us that we're getting the maximum performance we possibly can from the 3080 Ti. The CPU is a 13900K, just a monster, and arguably the fastest and most powerful processor you can buy right now, with 64 gigabyte DDR RAM. So you know the system is monstrous, yeah, so we want to be looking at above 95%. And the point is that because it's such a monstrous system, this is not going to be GPU bound. It is going to be GPU bound. In other words, the GPU is going to be at its maximum. So this is why this is a perfect opportunity for me to do this as we just about to slot a 4080 in.